Hey, I'm Jisoo, and I hope you're having a great time with the newly released Sifu update. We've waited 8 years for this, so you better be playing this game for 8 years. But today I want to talk about specifically two skills. I mean, 2.5 skills you will need to master if you want to have the best of time in the arenas. And I want to talk specifically about some objectives which require you to capture some area, some designated areas. For them specifically, you need to think outside of the box because if I remember properly, some objectives have enemies with no health bar, so you cannot kill enemies. You have to use those two skills to to control the ground and push enemies where you want them to be. So of course I'm referring to Pump Strike and Directional Throw, but first of all, let's talk about Pump Strike and why I think you need to master it right now. But before we begin, I do need to mention that you do not have to unlock any of those two skills. They are base kit, you start the game with them, and depending on the platform you play on, all you have to do is go into your settings to see exactly what the inputs for both the Directional Throw and Pump Strike are. Because I am playing on the PlayStation console, I use forward, backward, square. But again, you have to check your settings to see what those inputs are. Now, assuming you are familiar with your inputs now, why exactly do you need to master Pump Strike at all? Well, it allows you to push enemies afar. It allows you to create space and, well, provided you have unlocked chasing strikes or chasing trip kick, which require enemies to be in a pushed state, to be in a pushed animation to be performed. Well, performing Pump Strike is going to push enemies and then you can have a follow-up. But the reason why it is very important in the arenas is because whenever enemies are in the area you want to capture, you can push them away. And the beauty of Pump Strike is that it doesn't require you to do anything other than pushing. And there is something I have noticed with enemies, especially when it comes to those challenges. They will not attack you, and it's really hard to counter them if they don't throw the first punch. Well, guess what? Pump Strike allows you to bypass having to wait for enemies to attack first. You can just push them away and capture the area, because remember, the goal is not to kill them, the goal is to keep them away. Imagine, for example, staying at the edge of the area you need to capture and just making sure that everybody goes in. You don't move a step, not a single foot forward. All you do is push people away, you capture the area, and you go on to the next one. And I also remember some objectives requiring you to first damage enemies with the environment before you can actually deal damage to them. Well, guess what? Whenever you push enemies into like walls, stairs, whatever, it counts as environmental damage. So then you can hit them. So that's a good way to first bypass having to deal environmental damage to them. No, you can just push them into walls or even push them into each other. Because whenever enemies are, it same applies to you. Whenever someone is pushed into you, you enter a stun state and it counts as environmental damage. Take it however you want it. All you have to know is that Pump Strike helps you create space, and if you have all the skills, you can utilize them by throwing enemies and then striking them or tripping them. Depends on what you want. There's just one limitation to Pump Strike: you cannot control where the enemies are being thrown. This is why I'm taking this moment now to introduce its leader. I mean, it's not actually the little brother, it's the big brother, the Directional Throw. A while ago, I made a video about the most overpowered, most important skill in Sifu. It was the Directional Throw. And today I couldn't be any happier to see that the arenas actually take advantage of all those skills. And it's such a brilliant way to teach people mechanics, and I just think this is awesome. So anyway, I told you about the limitation for Pump Strike. You cannot control where enemies are being pushed. Well, with a Directional Throw, you can control exactly where you push enemies. There's just one downside: you need to wait for enemies to do something before you can use it, right? The Directional Throw only works whenever you perform a parry or on a stunned enemy. The first condition is very important because you can't simply perform a block, you have to perform a parry, a perfect deflection to be able to then perform the directional throw. And the second condition is for the enemy to be in the stun state. Well, I think at this point you know what a stun state is, but it is kind of subtle when exactly you can use the directional throw other than post parry. You know, whenever an enemy attack and then you dodge the attack and then hit them in the face, I think for 2 seconds after you hit them in the face, they can be thrown. See, it's not a proper stun state, but because you counter them post dodge, you can then throw them. So the directional throw works in 3 situations, in my opinion. First, post parry, secondly, on the stun enemy, and thirdly, after hitting enemies in the face post dodge. But because it is implied that they're in the stun state, well, I think they just called it in the stun state, which is fair. It is true. I'm just saying, I'm just letting you know about all the conditions so that you can perform them whenever you want. I think by now you realize just how similar those two skills are. They have the same purpose. They allow you to push people away, and you can still perform a follow-up attack such as chasing strikes or chasing trip kick whenever they are pushed, whether it is the directional throw or pump strike. And they also make up for the other, each other's limitations. One allows you to push people, but you cannot control which direction they're being pushed at. And the other one allows you to control the direction they push at, but you have to wait for them. You have to wait for the enemy to attack you, to counter them, or to parry them. And lastly, I want to briefly talk about invert throw, which is the ability to switch places with enemies provided you perform a parry or hit them. The reason why I said briefly is because I don't think you will be using that one skill as much as the pump strike or the directional throw. The reason why is simple, it's very situational. You need the enemy to be facing in the direction which you don't like. Let's say, for example, you are in the area and you are outside the area and you want the enemy to be on the outside and you in the inside. This is an instance where you would use the invert throw. But again, it is so situational that I don't think you will be using it often. But it's good to know that you have the option because again, enemies will sometimes not attack you and you need to capitalize on that, especially because you are timed. There is a time you need to beat to be able to get the token, and then by getting the token to get the outfit, the whole deal. So those 2.5 skills are what I think you need to master on top of all those other skills, charge back fist, crouch punch. But I'm going to make a separate video, and in that video I will take the time to explain exactly in which conditions you can use certain skills and how to make the most out of them. But in the meantime, I will really appreciate it if you let me know if there is something you're struggling with when it comes to the mechanics, the skills, something you don't understand. I'll be happy to help. But yeah, those are the 2.5 skills I thought you would need to be able to get those tokens and beat those capture designated areas. I'm Jisoo, and I'll see you soon. Have fun. Bye bye.